I want you to feel my absence, my boyfriend said, eyes still on his phone. I'm disappearing for a while. I lowered the book in my hands and looked at him, trying to understand what kind of sentence that even was. Not I need space, not we should talk, but an order, a lesson, a punishment dressed up as self-care. Understood, I replied. That was it. One word, no tears, no arguing, no begging him to stay. He froze. I saw it then, the flicker of confusion that crossed his face. He had expected panic, expected me to chase him, to ask how long, where he was going, what I'd done wrong. He expected his absence to hurt me enough to pull me closer. What he didn't expect was that I would take him seriously. My name is Lena, I'm 35 years old, and at that point, I'd been with my boyfriend for 3 years. While he was gone, teaching me a lesson, I quietly erased myself from his plans and relocated my entire life almost overnight. When his message finally came days later, asking, "Why isn't anything adding up?" I sent him proof that I was already gone. And then a second message appeared on my phone, one that wasn't meant for me. That's when I realized this wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was a pattern, and I had been living inside it for far too long. Before all of this, I thought intensity meant passion. I thought confidence meant strength. I thought love was something you proved by enduring discomfort. I was wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't confronting someone who's trying to control you. It's stepping back and letting them face the consequences of their own behavior. This is the story of how my boyfriend tried to weaponize his absence to make me appreciate him more, and how I learned to appreciate my life without him instead. Before he ever tried to disappear from my life, before absence became a weapon instead of a boundary, our relationship looked impressive from the outside. That's the dangerous part. It didn't start broken. It started intoxicating. I met Adrian through work. Different departments, same building. We crossed paths at a company event 3 years ago, the kind with bad wine and forced small talk. He stood out immediately. Tall, confident, magnetic. When he spoke, people listened. When he entered a room, attention followed. He didn't chase it. He expected it. At the time, I found that confidence attractive. Reassuring even. I had spent years building my career, learning to trust myself, and there was something thrilling about being chosen by someone who clearly believed he was the prize. It made me feel special, like I'd passed some invisible test. We started talking casually. Coffee breaks turned into lunches. Lunches turned into after-work drinks. Things evolved naturally, or at least that's how it felt then. He was intense in a way that felt like focus. When he wanted me, he wanted only me. When we were together, I felt seen, desired, chosen. For the first year, things were good. Not perfect, but real. We moved in together after 18 months. He liked control, but he framed it as standards. He liked things done a certain way, conversations handled a certain way, conflicts processed on his timeline. I told myself that was just part of his personality. Strong people have strong preferences. The subtle problems started quietly, small enough to excuse. He would cancel plans last minute, saying it was good for me to learn flexibility. During arguments, he'd go silent for hours, sometimes a full day, telling me later that he was giving me space to think about what I'd done. He always positioned his behavior as a gift, a lesson, something I should be grateful for. I didn't recognize it as manipulation then. I saw it as emotional depth, as someone who took relationships seriously enough to challenge me. When I felt unsettled, I blamed myself for being too sensitive, too reactive, not evolved enough to appreciate his methods. His family adored him. They were used to smoothing things over after his conflicts, making excuses for his intensity. That's just how he is, they'd say. He feels things deeply. The message was clear. If there was friction, it was because I wasn't handling him correctly. I tried harder. The breaking point began forming around his birthday last month. He decided to throw a party in our apartment. 40 people. No discussion. When I gently pointed out that I had a major work deadline that weekend and that our place wasn't suited for that many guests, he accused me of trying to ruin his special day. Called me selfish, controlling. Said I couldn't stand seeing him happy unless it was on my terms. I apologized. I helped plan the party. I cooked, I hosted, I smiled. I stayed up until 3 a.m. cleaning while he slept off his hangover. The next day, he didn't thank me. He told me the party would have been better if I'd had a better attitude. That's when something in me began to crack. I didn't know it yet. I just felt tired in a way sleep didn't fix, confused in a way explanations didn't soothe. I was giving everything and being told it wasn't enough, that my discomfort was proof I needed more lessons. 2 weeks later, sitting on the couch after dinner, he looked up from his phone and told me he was disappearing. And suddenly, all those small moments lined up into something I could no longer unsee. When I look back now, the warning signs were everywhere. They just never showed up wearing the labels people like to talk about. There were no screaming matches at the beginning, no obvious betrayals. What there was instead were small, calculated moments that trained me to doubt my reactions and adjust myself around his moods. Adrian liked control, but he never called it that. He called it growth. If I questioned a last-minute cancellation, he'd smile and tell me I needed to be more adaptable. Life doesn't revolve around plans, he'd say, like he was teaching me something profound. If we argued and I pushed for resolution, he'd disappear for hours, sometimes an entire day, and later explain that silence was healthy. I was giving you space to reflect, he'd tell me. You get emotional. This helps you calm down. I started associating discomfort with self-improvement. If something hurt, I assumed it meant I needed to learn from it. If I felt anxious, I told myself it was because I wasn't secure enough yet. Every time I felt small, I framed it as growth instead of erosion. The power imbalance crept in quietly. He decided when conversations were over. He decided when we spent time together. He decided when silence was appropriate. And somehow, all of it was presented as being for my benefit. Friends noticed before I was ready to admit it. One of them asked why I always checked with Adrian before committing to anything. Another joked that it sounded like I needed permission to have plans. I laughed it off, defending him automatically. He's intense, I'd say, but he cares. At home, the atmosphere shifted. I found myself choosing words carefully, timing conversations strategically, anticipating reactions instead of expressing needs. If I brought something up the wrong way, he'd sigh and say I was exhausting him. If I brought it up the right way, he'd tell me I was finally learning. The birthday party cemented something I couldn't ignore anymore. The way he invited 40 people into our shared space without asking. The way he reframed my practical concerns as an attack on his happiness. The way I apologized even though I'd done nothing wrong. And the way he accepted my apology without acknowledging my effort or my exhaustion. What scared me most wasn't how he treated me, it was how quickly I adapted. By the time we were sitting on the couch 2 weeks later, the television on but neither of us watching, I already felt like I was walking on uneven ground. When he looked up from his phone and said, "I want you to feel my absence," it didn't come out of nowhere. It was the logical next step. This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't a boundary. This was a test. A manufactured void designed to make me panic, to make me chase, to make me beg for his return so he could re-enter my life as the one with power. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't play my assigned role. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what I'd done wrong. I said, "Understood." And in that moment, without realizing it yet, I stopped being someone he could control. We were sitting on the couch after dinner when he said it, the television humming in the background, my book open in my hands. It was an ordinary Wednesday night, the kind that usually passed without consequence. That's what made his words land so sharply. "I want you to feel my absence," Adrian said, finally looking up from his phone. "I'm disappearing for a while." I lowered the book slowly. "What does that mean?" "Exactly what I said," he replied, already halfway gone emotionally. "I'm going away. No contact. I need you to understand what it's like when I'm not around. Maybe then you'll appreciate me more." The air felt thinner. "How long?" I asked. "As long as it takes for you to realize what you have." "Where are you going?" "That's not your concern," he said, standing up. "I'll reach out when I'm ready." He walked into the bedroom and started packing a bag like this was planned, like this conversation was just a formality. I stayed on the couch, my heart steady in a way that surprised me. This wasn't a breakup, this was discipline, a punishment framed as growth. I watched him move back and forth, folding clothes with irritated precision. He expected me to follow him, to ask him to stay, to cry or argue or negotiate. When none of that happened, he stopped in the doorway, suitcase in hand. "That's it?" he asked. "You just understand?" "What do you want me to say?" I asked calmly. "You've made your decision. I respect it." His jaw tightened. "You really don't care if I leave?" I didn't say that, I replied, but I'm not going to beg you to stay if you want to go. He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't recognize. Then he walked out. No goodbye kiss, no timeline. Just the sound of the door closing behind him and the echo of his keys fading down the hallway. The apartment felt bigger immediately, lighter, like pressure had been released from the walls. I sat there until midnight, thinking. Not spiraling, thinking. Then I started making calls. Our lease was month to month. I'd insisted on that flexibility when we moved in together, something he'd complained about at the time. Thursday morning, I called the landlord and gave 30 days' notice. Then I called a friend who worked in property management. By Friday afternoon, I'd toured 3 apartments and signed a lease on a 1-bedroom across town. Move-in date, 2 weeks. I didn't tell Adrian. He wanted space. He was going to get it. Monday, I transferred the utilities into his name. Tuesday, I updated my address with the bank and insurance companies. Wednesday, I hired movers for the weekend. My phone stayed silent the entire time. Thursday night, while taping up the last box, my phone buzzed. "Missing you," he texted. "Hope you're thinking about me." I stared at the message, then typed back. "Hope you're enjoying your time away." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say?" I asked. "You said you needed space. I'm giving it to you." He didn't respond. By the time he realized something wasn't adding up, my life was already packed and ready to go. The morning the movers arrived, I woke up before my alarm, not from anxiety, but from clarity, the kind that feels almost sterile, like the air after a storm. I made coffee in a kitchen that no longer felt like a negotiation space, just a room where I existed without being evaluated. While I waited, I walked through the apartment one last time, checking drawers and closets, making sure nothing that belonged to me was left behind. Each empty shelf felt like a quiet confirmation that I was doing the right thing. The movers were professional and efficient. By noon, my life fit neatly inside a truck. I did a final walkthrough, keys heavy in my palm, and took a photo of the empty space where my bookshelf had been. Not for nostalgia, for closure. I left the keys on the counter, locked the door, and walked away without looking back. My new apartment was smaller, but it was mine. I spent the weekend unpacking, arranging furniture, choosing where light fell and where silence lived. There was no tension in the air, no sense that a wrong word might start a new test. I slept deeply for the first time in months. Sunday night, my phone rang. His name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. I declined. A text followed. "Why aren't you answering?" I waited an hour before replying. "Was busy. What's up?" "I'm ready to come back," he wrote. "We should talk." "Okay," I replied. "When?" "Tomorrow. I'll be there around 6. I didn't correct his assumption that I'd be at the apartment. I simply wrote, "See you then." Monday. I worked from my new place. Laptop on the kitchen table. Calls taken from the living room. With every hour that passed, the stress I'd normalized began to loosen its grip. Around 5:30, my phone started lighting up. "I'm outside. Why isn't your car here? Are you working late? Hello? This isn't funny." I waited until 6:15. "I'm not at the apartment." A pause, then, "Where are you?" "My new place." 3 minutes of silence. Then the call came. I answered. "What do you mean your new place?" His voice was sharp, controlled anger cracking at the edges. "I moved out 2 days ago." "You moved out without telling me?" "You were unreachable," I said evenly. "You wanted space. I gave you space. Permanent space." "This is insane," he snapped. "We need to talk face to face." "I don't think that's necessary." "You don't get to decide. We're over without a conversation." "I'm not deciding anything," I said. "You decided when you walked out as a manipulation tactic. I just took you seriously." He insisted it wasn't manipulation, that he needed time. 2 weeks without a single real conversation, without accountability, without transparency. That wasn't thinking. That was control. And I was done being controlled. "You wanted me to feel your absence," I said. "Mission accomplished. Now you get to feel mine." I hung up, turned off my phone, cooked dinner in my quiet kitchen, and ate it in peace. For the first time, my reaction wasn't about managing his emotions. It was about honoring my own. I turned my phone back on Tuesday morning, expecting a few missed calls. What I saw instead made my chest tighten. 37 messages, 14 missed calls, most from Adrian, a handful from mutual friends asking what was going on, saying he'd been calling them in tears, claiming I had abandoned him without warning. I didn't respond to any of it. I went to work, Had meetings, drank my coffee, came home to my apartment that already felt more like home after 3 days than our shared place ever had in 3 years. The quiet wasn't lonely, it was grounding. Wednesday afternoon, a message came from an unknown number. You should know she wasn't alone last week. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering, trying to decide if this was real or another manipulation layered on top of everything else. Who is this? I typed. Someone who thinks you deserve the truth. Check her location history if you still have access. She was at a place downtown Thursday through Sunday. Not alone. I did still have access. We'd shared location data months earlier, one of those trust gestures that felt reasonable at the time. My hands were shaking as I pulled it up and scrolled back, my breath caught in my throat. She hadn't been at a hotel. She'd been at a house. One address, the same address, for 4 days. Thursday through Sunday. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself, then immediately removed the location sharing access. The evidence felt cold and final, like a door closing inside me that I hadn't realized was still cracked open. Thursday morning, security called my office. There's a woman here asking to see you. Do you want her sent up? I knew it was him before they finished the sentence. No, I said. Then, after a beat, I'll meet him in the lobby. He looked wrecked. Hair pulled back messily, no makeup, sweatpants, and a hoodie like he'd rolled out of bed and driven straight over. When he saw me, he stepped forward and tried to hug me. I stepped back. We need to talk, he said urgently. I'm at work, I replied. Just 10 minutes, please. We sat in the lobby. He launched into a rehearsed explanation about how disappearing had been immature, how he'd realized how much he needed me, how being away made everything clear. He said he'd been staying with a friend, soul-searching, understanding that I was the most important person in his life. I let him finish. Then I took out my phone and showed him the screenshots. Which friend? I asked quietly. The color drained from his face. What is that? Your location history, I said. The house you stayed at last week. Want to tell me who lives there? You're tracking me, he snapped, grabbing my phone, his hands visibly shaking. You gave me access, I reminded him, for emergencies. I think this qualifies. He stared at the screen, searching for a lie that would stick. It was my cousin. Try again, I said. I know all your cousins. None of them live there. He stumbled through another story. A college friend. Someone who understood him. Nothing physical, he insisted. Just someone to talk to. 4 days at their house while he was supposedly teaching me a lesson about his absence. I stood up. I'm going back to work, I said. Don't come here again. Wait, he pleaded. Please. We're done, I said calmly. Completely done. Don't contact me. Don't come to my job. Don't call my friends. I walked away without looking back, went up to my office, closed the door, and sat there breathing for 20 minutes, letting the truth settle fully into my body. That night, another message came from the unknown number. She's telling people you abandoned her. There's more. Call this number. When I did, a man answered, nervous, careful. You don't know me, he said, but I know her. I'm her ex. And suddenly, everything began to make sense. Hearing that stranger's voice on the phone was like having the floor drop out from under a room I thought I finally understood. I'm her ex, the man said quietly, like he wasn't sure he should be saying any of this. From 2 years ago. My blood went cold. I leaned against the kitchen counter in my new apartment, the phone pressed to my ear, every muscle in my body suddenly tense. I didn't interrupt him. Something told me not to. She did the same thing to me, he continued. The disappearing act. Said she needed space. Said I had to feel her absence so I'd appreciate her. While she was gone, she was seeing someone else. Testing options. When I didn't chase her hard enough, she came back crying, saying I hadn't fought for her. Each sentence landed like a slow, deliberate blow. Not shocking in a dramatic way, but devastating in its familiarity. It was like listening to someone read my own relationship back to me, stripped of excuses and romantic framing. He told me he'd spent a year in therapy after their breakup, learning to recognize manipulation, learning to trust his instincts again. When he saw her posts online about me, about how I'd abandoned her, something in him snapped. He couldn't stay silent anymore. I know how this ends if you don't see it clearly, he said. I just didn't want you to keep blaming yourself. After we hung up, I sat on the floor of my living room for a long time. I didn't cry right away. I felt hollow, numb, like all the emotional energy I'd been using to survive had finally run out. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for her online and found a secondary account I hadn't known about. Different username, private. but her face in the profile photo. The posts were recent, emotional, carefully written. She talked about betrayal, about being abandoned without warning, about how she'd given everything to someone who walked away the moment things got difficult. Friends commented with sympathy, calling me heartless, selfish, cruel. Not a single mention of her disappearing act, not a word about the ultimatum, not a hint of the 4 days she spent at another man's house. I felt sick. This was the lowest point, not the breakup, not the move, not even discovering she'd lied. It was realizing how easily I could have stayed trapped in this story if I hadn't stepped back when I did. How close I'd been to begging someone like this to come back. How easily I could have been rewritten as the villain in my own life. For the first time, I truly questioned myself. Was I ever loved, or was I just useful? Was I chosen, or was I convenient until something better came along? I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with a grief that wasn't about losing her. It was grief for the time I'd spent doubting myself, for the version of me who thought intensity meant intimacy and tests meant commitment. This was the emotional bottom, the moment where all illusions finally burned away, leaving nothing but the truth and the choice of what to do with it. And for the first time, I knew there was no going back. The turning point didn't come with rage or confrontation. It came with clarity so sharp it felt almost physical, the kind that straightens your spine and quiets the noise all at once. The morning after that call, I woke up before my alarm. Sunlight cut across the floor of my new apartment, landing on boxes I hadn't finished unpacking yet. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel reactive. I felt resolved. I replayed the timeline slowly, deliberately. The birthday party, the silent treatments, the way absence had been framed as a lesson, the ultimatum on the couch, the 4 days at someone else's house while I was supposed to be learning how to appreciate him. None of it looked confusing anymore. It looked intentional. My phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number. A photo followed. Him, my boyfriend, sitting across from a woman at a restaurant downtown the previous weekend. Close, comfortable, intimate in the way people are when they believe no one who matters is watching. I didn't feel jealous. I felt free. I forwarded the photo to my email and deleted the message thread. Evidence wasn't for revenge, it was for closure. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Later that afternoon, security called again. He was back at my office. "I just need 5 minutes," he said when I met him in the lobby again, his voice hoarse. "Please." I agreed, not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted to speak from a place of certainty, not unfinished emotion. He started apologizing immediately, said he'd messed up, said he was confused, said he hadn't slept, said he loved me. The words tumbled out, urgent and unstructured, like he was trying to overwhelm me into softening. I let him talk. When he finally stopped waiting for my response, I spoke calmly. "This wasn't about needing space," I said. "It was about control. You wanted me anxious, waiting, proving myself." "That's not true," he said quickly. "It is," I replied, "and this isn't the first time you've done it." He froze. "I spoke to your ex," I continued, "the one from 2 years ago. He told me everything." His face collapsed in on itself, like something deflated all at once. "You don't get to rewrite this," I said. "You don't get to make me the villain because your tactic failed. I see the pattern now." He tried to interrupt me. I raised my hand. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm done, and that's different." Tears followed. Real ones this time. Promises, therapy, change, all the things that sound convincing when someone realizes they've lost power. "I don't need you to become a better person," I said softly. "I just need you to stay away from my life." I stood up. "Don't come to my job again. Don't contact me. This is over." As I walked back upstairs, something shifted completely. Not relief, not triumph, alignment. For the first time, my actions matched what my instincts had been trying to tell me for years. I wasn't walking away because I was hurt. I was walking away because I finally understood my value. Once I stopped engaging, everything unraveled on its own. I didn't post explanations. I didn't defend myself publicly. I didn't try to control the story. I blocked his number, his secondary accounts, every burner profile he tried to reach me from. Silence became my boundary, and it was stronger than any argument I could have made. The fallout started rippling outward almost immediately. Mutual friends began reaching out, cautiously at first. "Hey, I just wanted to check in." Some admitted they'd believed what he told them initially, that I'd abandoned him, that I'd disappeared without warning. I didn't get defensive. I didn't overshare. I simply told the truth when asked, calmly and without embellishment. The ones who mattered heard the difference. Others figured it out on their own. A few days later, our former landlord called me. He sounded tired before he even finished introducing himself. "She was back at the apartment last night," he said. "There was a scene, screaming, crying. She's saying you stole her belongings when you moved out." "I didn't touch anything that wasn't mine," I replied evenly. "That's what I thought," he said. "Your original lease application lists exactly what furniture you brought into the unit 3 years ago. What you took matches that list perfectly. Her things are all still there." I sent him photos of the original paperwork anyway, just to be thorough. He thanked me and said he'd handle it. Apparently, accountability was a foreign language to her, but the paper trail spoke fluently. That night, my phone rang again, a number I hadn't blocked yet. It was his mother. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear how far the story had traveled. When I picked up, she didn't bother with pleasantries. "I need you to tell me what really happened," she said, "because what she's saying doesn't add up." So I told her. Everything. The disappearing act, the ultimatum, the manipulation framed as growth, the location data, the lies, the man's house, the pattern confirmed by her ex. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't attack her son. I just laid the facts out, one by one. She was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed deeply. "This isn't the first time," she admitted. "There were incidents in college, another relationship after that. We thought she'd grown out of it." "She hasn't," I said softly. "No," she agreed. "She hasn't. I'm sorry for what she put you through, and I'm sorry I called without knowing the full story." When we hung up, I felt something settle. Validation doesn't heal everything, but it closes doors you don't need to keep pushing against. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment slowed. When she realized I wasn't going to respond, wasn't going to defend myself online, wasn't going to chase closure, the drama lost momentum. Stories without an audience don't survive long. Eventually, mutual friends began apologizing. Quiet messages, late-night texts. "I'm sorry I assumed. I should have asked you first." I accepted them without resentment. People believe the loudest voice in the room until the quiet one stays consistent. Her ex, the man who warned me, and I met for coffee once, not out of bonding, but out of shared clarity. We compared timelines, laughed darkly at the similarities. He told me he was engaged now, to someone who treated him like a partner instead of a pawn. I was genuinely happy for him. A month later, she moved out of the apartment. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't care. I changed my number after she tried reaching out through new accounts and burner phones. Complete disconnection. Scorched earth, not out of anger, but necessity. Some patterns only end when access does. I heard through the grapevine that she was already dating someone new. The speed didn't surprise me. Intensity needs an audience. Control needs a subject. I thought briefly about warning him, then let the thought pass. That wasn't my responsibility. He would learn, or he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my circus anymore. What surprised me most was how quickly my nervous system adapted once the chaos stopped. My new apartment felt calm. My sleep improved. My thoughts felt linear again. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd tolerated what I did for so long. The answer wasn't weakness. It was hope. Hope, when misplaced, can keep you trapped just as effectively as fear. And when hope finally let go, everything else followed. It's been 6 weeks since I moved out, 6 weeks since I stopped negotiating with someone who treated love like a series of tests. The quiet that followed didn't feel empty, it felt earned. My new apartment still surprises me. Not because it's perfect, but because it's peaceful. There's no tension hanging in the air, no waiting for the next mood shift, no wondering whether silence is punishment or space. I wake up without bracing myself. I come home without rehearsing conversations in my head. For the first time in a long while, my body trusts the room I'm in. I started therapy, not to process heartbreak, but to understand why I'd stayed as long as I did. What I learned wasn't flattering, but it was freeing. I didn't stay because I was weak. I stayed because I believed intensity meant depth, and endurance meant commitment. I thought if I could just pass the tests, the love would stabilize. I was wrong. Love that requires suffering to prove its value isn't love, it's control. I've started dating casually. Nothing serious yet. I'm taking my time, paying attention to how I feel in my body instead of how impressive someone looks on paper. I'm learning that calm isn't boring. that consistency isn't a lack of passion, that real connection doesn't need scarcity to feel valuable. I heard he's dating someone new. That didn't hurt the way I thought it might. It just confirmed what I already knew. People who use absence as a weapon don't suddenly learn presence. They just find new places to perform the same patterns. If there's one lesson I hope anyone watching this takes with them, it's this. Manipulation doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like confidence. Sometimes it sounds like growth. Sometimes it comes wrapped in words like space, reflection, and lesson. But real love doesn't disappear to teach you a point. Real love doesn't need you anxious to feel important. When someone tells you they're going to disappear so you'll appreciate them more, listen carefully. What they're really saying is that they need leverage to feel secure, and that's not something you can fix by loving harder. She wanted me to feel her absence. Instead, I learned how good my life feels without her. And that's not revenge, that's freedom.